Okay, good morning. This is John Ciet. There are those who are going to be joining us this morning on Facebook Live, so if you're there and watching, good morning, good to see you. And if you're on the audio call, welcome as well. Can't see you, but heard many of you come in as the entry chime sounded. We'll give you about 30 seconds to get in place. If you would, please put your phone on mute and keep, if it's not, keep background noise to a minimum. We want to make certain that those sounds are not part of the call. So, hope you all had a great Father's Day weekend. It was a great weekend at the Ciet household. We spent time with my dad and, of course, with the kids. So, hope you all had the opportunity to spend time with Dad or that father figure in your life, or to remember your dad. So, let's get started. I had a great conversation actually on Friday. It was actually a recruiting conversation, and I was in my office, in fact this very office, and meeting with a gentleman who's been in the software sales industry for nearly 20 years, a couple of decades. Very professional. He came in dressed to the nines, had a suit on, and presents himself very well. And he's looking to get into real estate. In fact, he knows that he wants to get into real estate, but he asked me a couple of questions. He said, kind of paint a picture for me of what it would be like, what it would look like, and what would I have to do to replace my income. And I said, well, first of all, let me ask you, what sort of income are you looking to replace? He said, well, I've consistently made $150,000 to $160,000 a year in that position. He said, so, and it was interesting, he used the word, I'm going to write this word down here, he said, I want to be realistic. And I said, well, that's interesting. I said, well, tell me more about that. He said, well, I'm new to the business of real estate, and I don't know really what's required, so maybe if you could paint a picture for me and tell me what I would need to do, then I could understand what would be a realistic income. I said, well, first of all, let's start by changing your vocabulary. I don't like the word realistic. It's a very limiting term. What I like to say is what is possible. So I want to talk today about what's possible, but more specifically, I want to talk about the fundamentals and what the fundamentals will make possible for us if we recognize them and are consistent at applying those things. So in my conversation with this gentleman, I started to think about it. I thought, well, what do I say to him? And of course, the answer was very easy for me. I went back to the fundamentals. But before we get into the detail of what I shared with him and I'm going to share with you today, I want to give you a couple of examples. In 1961, if you don't know the name Vince Lombardi, he was a very famous coach in the NFL, the Professional Football League. And in 1961, his team lost to the Philadelphia Eagles. They had won all the way through the playoffs, but in the championship they lost the game. So when it came time for the next season, training camp, Vince Lombardi started out the training camp this way. Now keep in mind, I want you to understand, that these were professionals who had played the game for many, many years. And what Vince Lombardi did at the first day of practice, in his first words, he grabbed a football and he looked at the men in the room and he said, men, this is a football. And then what he did is he began to describe the specifics of a football. Its dimensions, how much it weighs, how it's made, and then how it's held. He went through all the detail. Over the coming days and weeks in the training camp, he proceeded to talk about the fundamentals. And at one point, one of the men on the team said, Coach, hold on, you're going way too fast for me. I don't think I understand. And of course, he was kidding the coach because the coach was talking about fundamentals. Well, Vince Lombardi, he smiled, kind of laughed a little bit, and then continued on his path to explain the fundamentals. Now, what is interesting is this. In fact, I wrote this down to remember specifically what happened after that for Vince Lombardi and his teams. They went on that year to beat the New York Giants 37-0. They had lost the previous championship, the previous year, to the Eagles, and then went on to win the next year's championship 37-0. They skunked the Giants. What's even more interesting is this. Vince Lombardi never coached a losing record. Never had a losing record from then on out with his teams. In fact, those fundamentals will make a difference. If you think about this, I always like to use this example because I know we all know and understand the idea of fundamentals, but think about this. A Rolls Royce, the standard Rolls Royce, will cost approximately $500,000 base price. A lot of money, you'd agree, right? But if you take a look at it, a standard Toyota Corolla will cost somewhere around $22,000. average sales price. Now, they're both cars, right? They have that in common, but that's not all that they have in common. The truth is that the process that's used fundamentally is the same. There is a factory. There are machines and people and implements and products that go in raw that come out in a certain form or fashion to create the product, whatever it is. But the outcome is completely different. Even though they're both cars, the truth is the outcome is different. And the proof of that is just simply in the numbers. Those numbers demonstrate very clearly that there's a difference in the outcome, and more specifically, the fundamentals and applying the fundamentals is very different. So it's not just to recognize what the fundamentals are, but also to recognize that it's important that we do the fundamentals the right way. It's the approach that we take to implementing the fundamentals that will dictate our outcomes, if that makes sense. So let me just share with you what I shared with this gentleman I met with on Friday. His name is Tom. I shared with Tom, I said, look, Tom, if you're going to be successful in real estate, the first thing that I would share with you is this. You have to recognize what your job is. Now, again, I know that if you're watching me here, if I could see you, many of you would be rolling your eyes. But remember, what I want to share with you is this. It is the fundamentals and grasping those and doing them consistently to the highest level every single day when we commit to doing it, Monday through Friday, whatever your schedule is, that we get the results that we get. So the thing I would ask you to ask yourself is, do I like my current circumstances? Do I have enough money in the bank? Do I have enough transactions under contract? Have I closed enough transactions here today? Do I have enough listings? Do I have enough buyers? Do I have enough transactions under contract that are going to close in the next 30 days to ensure that I have enough money to meet all of my obligations? See, the truth is, it's going to take a clear recognition of what your job is in order to be successful in this business. So let me just quickly review what your job is. Number one, it's to prospect. It's to talk to people. Now, I know that we all know that, but the question that I want you to ask yourself is this. Are you doing it consistently? See, because it's okay to do it once in a while and then to say to yourself, well, yes, I do. I've tried it, but boy, this is a tough market. Inventory is so low. I don't know that that's really the right way. And I would say to you, ladies and gentlemen, it is the only way. Because if you're going to rely on your SOI and for business to come to you passively, rather than you proactively going out and getting it, you're going to die on the vine in this business, particularly in this market. So we've got to make certain we're prospecting, specifically prospecting proactively. Now, when I say proactively, of course, there are various things you can do, from calling for sale by owners, expireds, just listed, just sold, calling renters, non-owner occupied, in other words, investors who own rental properties. You can also, of course, work with your sphere of influence, which you should all be doing. In fact, I have a belief that every great agent's business should be founded on the foundation of their sphere of influence. Who better to work with than the people who already know, like, and trust you, right? So working with your sphere of influence. So those various sources, but reaching out to them proactively. Look, ladies and gentlemen, if you have buyers right now, which I'm certain all of you do, you probably have more buyers than you can handle. If you have buyers, the best thing that you could do is to stop waiting for other agents to put homes on the MLS in hopes that you can show those homes and then compete. Now, let me just tell you a quick story about that. I had an agent just about a month ago share with me a story where they listed a home on Friday for somewhere in the high 160s. By the end of the weekend, Sunday night, they had received over 60 offers on that property. Now, you can find yourself in that sort of a situation, waiting for listings to get on the market and competing against all of those other buyers and those buyers' agents, or you can go out and find that inventory for your buyer. And the cool thing is this, you find that inventory for your buyer, you match what is now your listing with your buyer, you get paid twice as much for the same amount of work. And you've also created your own inventory. You've created your opportunities in a market where a lot of agents simply say, well, it's just the way it is because inventories are low. It's not. It doesn't have to be that way. It goes back to the fundamentals. Because see, what I would tell you is, whether we're in an expanding market, a contracting market, or a market that is static, the truth is the number one fundamental to ensure that you have the business that you want, it always goes back to prospecting proactively. The second thing is this, to make certain that we are following up. Following up is important. And the reason for that is this, is that 75% of the business that you will do, that you have the opportunity to do, will come through following up. You and I both know this. Most people say no initially, and therefore it requires multiple contacts for them to say yes, particularly if you're looking to get business outside of your sphere, which you should be doing, particularly in today's marketplace. So look to your sphere of influence in following up, but beyond that, go to those people you don't know and consistently following up with them to ensure that you're creating those opportunities. We have to follow up consistently. And then the third thing is this, to make certain that as we follow up, the goal, of course, always is to set appointments and to pre-qualify. Now, I say set appointments and pre-qualify specifically. I don't mean pre-qualify buyers to ensure that they have financial ability. Of course, that's part of it. But specifically to determine, okay, am I going to be meeting with these people? Does it make sense, or am I going to be wasting my time? I want you to remember this, because this is a fundamental that the best agents understand, those who are perennial producers who make the most money in this industry. They always pre-qualify, and the reason for that is this, is they want to go out there and make certain that they're absolutely prepared, or more specifically, that they don't show up to an appointment that they know they can't get the listing. The reason that top producers can go out and get 80 to 90% of the listings that they present on is because they set themselves up for success. They ask the right questions and understand that when they go out, that the person they're meeting with, to a very high degree, is very likely going to be signing the contract with them when they meet for that listing appointment. So making certain that we set appointments and pre-qualify. So look, the standard should be, as it relates to these three things, is that you do this daily, ditto daily, and ditto daily. But the goal should be setting at least one appointment per day. It's like an apple a day. If you'll eat an apple a day, they say it'll keep the doctor away. Well, the truth is, if you will set an appointment a day, it'll keep the bill collectors away. It'll ensure that you have the money to go out and do the things that you want to achieve the financial goals that you have. Because in this business, think about it. If you set one appointment per day, that's 5 a week. If you did that and you went out on half of those appointments and took half of those, you're taking approximately 1.5 to 2 listings a week. There isn't one of you on this call or watching Facebook Live who wouldn't celebrate if you did that number of listings every single week. None of this comes from anything that you have to buy. I'll make that very clear. There are no gadgets, no gizmos, no widgets you have to buy. You just simply have to be willing to get on the phone or go knock on doors and reach out to people to do what this business is all about, to establish relationships. Then the fourth thing is this. To make certain that we set the appointments and then go out and then we present. To go out and actually have those conversations. Those conversations where we have the ability to build the rapport, the connection, and then to build the value that's necessary. To have them see that we are confident in our ability to help them get what it is that they want, and they choose us versus the competition. Exceptionally important. Now I want you to look at this very quickly here. Prospecting, follow-up, setting appointments and pre-qualifying, and presenting. What do those four things have in common? There's one word that I use to describe it. It's simply communication. It's communication. So when you think about that, if we talk about the fundamentals, and what I shared with Tom is this. I said, Tom, what I want you to understand is this. You are now signing up to be a professional communicator. And professional communicators are willing, one, to reach out and talk to people, but then they constantly work on the skill of doing that to ensure that they get the results that they want. To ensure that they get the results that they want, they are committed to a daily regimen or process of improving the skill of communicating with other human beings. Because, ladies and gentlemen, as much as you'd like to believe that you're in the business of helping people buy and sell real estate, you're not. Homes sell homes. And let me prove the point. If you had a client, a buyer, who wanted to buy a 1-bedroom condo downtown in the metropolitan area, and you kept showing them 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranches out in some bedroom community, 15, 20 miles outside of the metropolitan area, would they buy one of those homes? And the answer, of course, is no. In fact, they would get so frustrated with the process and with you, they would fire you. See, homes sell homes. You show them a 1-bedroom condo downtown that meets their needs, they'll buy it. But you'll never get an opportunity to do that until they choose you versus the competition, which means you have to have the ability to build the rapport, and you have to have the ability to show the value that you can offer them. And that only comes through great communication, which really is built on asking questions. So your job to prospect, to follow up, set appointments, present, and then two others that I won't write down, but I want you to remember. It's to work with highly qualified buyers, making certain if you're going to work with buyers in this market especially, make certain that you have them qualified, not only through the pre-qualification script, but make certain that you get them pre-qualified with our preferred lender. Absolutely necessary in today's market. Otherwise, you're going to be wasting your time because it's difficult enough to get a buyer under contract, let alone working with a buyer ultimately who is not going to qualify for financing. And then the sixth point would be this, to make certain that you're getting price reductions when necessary. Not so much an issue in today's market, but let me assure you, I still see listings on the market for 30, 60 days. And if you have a listing that's on the market for that period of time and you're not getting offers on it, ladies and gentlemen, the market is being very clear about what's wrong with your listing. It's not the listing, it's the price. So we have your job. Now, aside from that, let me share with you what I relayed to Tom. I said, Tom, if you're going to replace your income, which I think is nonsense, you should be looking to do more than replacing your income. And by the time you were done, this was the exciting thing. He said, I really think that I could make $250,000 in this business. And I said, yes, you could. That's the point. It's one of the reasons you should be getting into real estate. And it's one of the reasons, ladies and gentlemen, that you should be in real estate is because whatever you decide that you want to earn in this business, you can, as long as you pay attention to the fundamentals. And so the next thing that I shared with Tom was this. I said, look, Tom, you have to make certain that aside from understanding your job, that you have to have a schedule. And part of that schedule is making certain that it's really the goal of a schedule, that you have some sort of, I'll use the word balance, although I don't know that balance is truly possible. It's something that we always work towards, but life in itself and nature is always in an imbalance, working towards getting a balance, but balance and then specifically sustainability. It may not be balanced entirely, but at least it's sustainable. We have to create a schedule that is sustainable. So what is a schedule that would allow for sustainability? Well, one of the things we have to pay attention to is this. I call it the three pillars. The three pillars basically says this, that every person's life is built upon three distinct pillars. The first pillar is our health. And it doesn't have to be in this order. I share them in all different sorts of orders depending upon the conversation. The second one would be relationships. And the third one would be finances or your money. Okay? So put together a schedule that recognizes all three pillars. What we know is that if there is neglect in any one of these areas, if there's neglect in health or in relationships or in finances, then what happens is it puts significant pressure on the other two pillars and weakens them. So one weak pillar puts more stress on the other two and therefore weakens the entire structure and can lead to collapse. And a very good example of that is Tiger Woods over a decade ago when he started to have problems where? In his relationship, it started to put pressure on his health, his mental and emotional health, which of course affected his what? His business, his golf game, and then of course the endorsements that he otherwise would have gotten had he not had the challenges that he had here. So what we know is, the three pillars tells us that we have three distinct areas in our life that we should be paying attention to in our schedule in order to have sustainability and to work towards that balance that's necessary for us to achieve our goals. See, to me it doesn't matter what your goal is. It really doesn't matter. The fundamentals don't change. Whether you decide you want to make $50,000 a year in this business or $5 million a year in this business, the truth is what you have to do on a daily basis in terms of the fundamentals does not change. It is the same. Doing your job, having a written schedule, and making certain that you're executing on that on a daily basis. So what would I put in my schedule? Let me get down here and grab my eraser. What I would put in my schedule is this. Number one, if you're taking notes, write this down. What I would say is this. Today didn't start today, ladies and gentlemen. It started last night. Remember that. Today started last night. And the reason I say that is this, because whatever you decide you want to do today will be affected by the amount of energy and enthusiasm, mental, physical, and emotional that you bring to the table. Your ability to get up in the morning and actually do your job. So based upon that, make certain that you recognize when you need to go to bed to get the number of hours that you need so that you get up at the time that you need to based upon the things that you say that you want to do. Now, for some of you, you're going to have to get up earlier than others. And that's just, you can call that fair or unfair. I'm just simply going to call it life. That's the way it is. Some are going to have to get up earlier based upon your obligations. But making certain that you recognize, when do I have to go to bed? How many hours of sleep do I need to get? Now, most doctors or nutritionists would tell you that you should be getting 7.5 to 8 hours, and I would agree with that. So 7.5 to 8 hours. And at what time would therefore then you be getting up? And is that enough sleep? And is that the right time to get up? And if it's not, then you have to adjust the time that you go to bed. So making certain you get up at the right time. And then it doesn't have to be in this order, but these are the things that I would share with you that you should pay attention to, that I've tried to pay attention to over the years. Of course, one of the most important things is exercise. It's difficult to be in this business and to be successful if you don't have a lot of energy. How many times have you heard me or George talk about this, or one of the brokers or managers talk about the importance of energy, enthusiasm in your job as you do it? Well, if you don't take care of yourself physically, if you don't exercise, it's going to be difficult to execute your job on a daily basis and to just simply come to the stage of life with a great deal of energy and enthusiasm. So it's important that we recognize how key to the process exercise is. And I say key to the process of real estate, of your success in real estate, and how important that role is of exercise in the outcomes that you get. Don't underestimate it. I can tell you, back in the day when I was carrying an extra 60 pounds around, I didn't realize how negatively that affected me mentally, physically, and emotionally until I lost it. The difference was day and night. In fact, after I had lost that weight, this is not an exaggeration, after I had lost the weight, started to pay attention to a daily regimen of exercise, and the other thing that I'll tell you to pay attention to is your diet. Once I started to pay attention to that, I started to get focused on the other goals in my life that I wanted to achieve. And within 7 years of losing those 62 pounds, I became a multimillionaire in real estate. Don't kid yourself, ladies and gentlemen. Your physical health has a very direct relationship to your financial health. Your success in this business is going to be affected to a very significant degree, your commitment to your well-being physically, mentally, and emotionally, to how well you do in this business. So your exercise, your diet, and then I'm also going to put in here your family. Making certain that you set aside time, whether it's in the morning or in the evening, during the course of the day, to spend time with them. And then last but not least, of course, is your business. Okay. Now, in your business, I would say the first thing that you should recognize that should be in there is, when do you prospect? What time am I going to prospect, and for how long? So when am I going to do it? How long am I going to do it? And who am I going to reach out to? You should be asking those 3 questions. When, how long, and whom? Answer those 3 questions so you know you've got clarity. Because remember, with clarity there is power. If you know when you're going to do it, for how long you're going to do it, and who you're going to call, it's more likely that you're actually going to do what? Do it. Absolutely necessary. I will tell you that the difference between those who do things during the course of the day versus those who make excuses as to why they didn't is that those who do it simply are clear about what they're going to do. They schedule it, setting the time in their schedule, and then they find themselves doing it. So, look, it's what I told Tom. I said, Tom, you're going to find agents, if you talk to them now in today's marketplace, who will tell you this is a tough market. It's a tough market because inventories are low. And it's more difficult for me now to make more money in this market than it was last year or the previous years. And what I told Tom is this. I said, Tom, don't listen to them. The truth is, as long as you pay attention to the fundamentals and you execute on a daily basis, you will achieve your goal. It's not about being realistic. It's about looking at what's possible. And the fundamentals, if they are executed consistently every single day, will allow you to achieve whatever it is that you want in this business. So I shared those 2 concepts with Tom, and I said, Tom, look, we have to recognize that in this process that you're going to have to be willing to set your ego aside and to learn some things that you don't already know. Or more specifically, to set your ego aside and to be willing to be confronted on things that you already know that you should be doing but you're not, and to be willing to hear that you're not doing it, and that you should be doing it, and therefore then go out and do it. So, ladies and gentlemen, look, I know that what I've shared with you here today, there is probably not one of you in here who didn't understand that intellectually. There isn't probably, but maybe a handful of you who've not heard specifically what your job is and then that concept of the 3 pillars. That's not what's important. What is important is this. Are you going to do it, or are you doing it consistently? Again, the reason that Vince Lombardi went back to the fundamentals is because he knew how important they were. The reason that Rolls-Royce can get $500,000 at a minimum for a car that does the same thing as a Toyota Corolla is because fundamentally they do their job consistently to a higher degree with greater skill. If you want to get better results than you're currently getting, if you want to get better results than you got last year, if you want to continue to improve on the great results that you're already getting, if you're getting great results, always go back to the fundamentals. There's always room for improvement. Let me just leave you with this quick example. The space shuttle is always off track 98% of the time. There is constant course correction. So the thing that I want to ask yourself is this. Go back and look at the fundamentals, from prospecting to following up, to setting appointments and pre-qualifying, to presenting, to working with highly qualified buyers and getting price reductions. Look at those fundamentals and ask yourself how well you're doing those things on a daily basis. And is there room for improvement? And what I would venture to guess, in fact, what I would bet every single one of you, is that there is room for improvement. Look inside yourself and what you're doing on a daily basis for the solutions, rather than first looking outside yourself and trying to find different answers. The truth is that the answers are always within us if we will just simply be willing to recognize them, to set our ego aside and say, look, I'm responsible. It's what I'm doing or not doing, and I can make the difference. So congratulations on being the call today. I hope that it was helpful. I know that if you will take these concepts and implement them, that they will be helpful and they'll make a difference for you just as they did for me. If you're not a millionaire and you want to be one, the single most important message I could share with you is stick to the fundamentals, because they will deliver you whatever it is that you want. Thanks for being here today.